The thing, likely in my lifetime, it's going to be $1 million in DC. It's going to look crazy over here, I guess. Anyways, the outside, also too, invest in education for their children. Man, if people was investing in education for their children, I'm not talking about the wealthy people, I'm just talking about in general, we wouldn't have all these student loan issues. When it comes to people and their kids' education, man, I cannot wait. And I don't want this to happen, but it's going to happen. People's kids are going to get on the internet, whatever the pop in social media is, then, and they're going to talk about their student loan issues. And I'm literally just going to tag you in your parents' post and say, see all these trips they went on, this wedding, these things like that. This is why you have student loan debt. Because that's what's about to happen. We're getting to a point now where millennials, our children, not mine, because my son's not even 11 months yet, but for the millennials who had already had children, that are in their late teen years, they're on social media. And for those people who were my age brackets, I'll be 31 this year, but had kids, right out of high school, they have almost teenagers now. So in short, though, for my generation, as far as my, 1 to 2 years plus or minus, late 80s, early 90s babies, you've essentially put your whole life on the internet. Now we've grown through the growing pains of social media and all the stuff that comes along with it, which Gen Z hasn't had to do. But your whole life's on the internet. Now, some of y'all do the cleanup where you delete stuff, or you're still in that high school crap where you delete stuff when you break up, things like that. But for most millennials, your whole life is on the internet. For those who were born in late 80s, early 90s, and it's just like, yeah, all these trips, all these vacations, everything you were taking, showing where you was making decisions to build your assets, putting you in position to buy homes, or buy a home and invest in your education for your children, so you can cement your wealth. I mean, like, come on now. The outsized income growth of the nation's top earning families before and after the pandemic may be one of the U.S. economy's most important storylines, Murray said. Even though the bottom 20% of earners saw drastic increases in pay, their overall wealth share in the country actually decreased as the rich became much richer, he said. Yeah, when everybody got these stimulus checks, a lot of people went and spent that money on designer, or in short, gave the money back to rich people. So in short, the rich people own these companies, these designer companies that a lot of poor people are spending their money on. And then so even though those the bottom 20% had an increase in income and the stimulus checks, because based off of just income threshold, everyone in the bottom 20%, would qualify for it just in general. They quote unquote had more money. But just because you have more money, income is not wealth. I've already said this before. Just because you have more money doesn't mean you're going to have more wealth. And a lot of those people, all they did was go and take that money that they got either increase in pay and or stimulus checks, and they went and spent it or gave it back to these wealthy people. I mean, it's just like the lottery. I mean, it'd be different if we didn't have the lottery data, but we already have the data in on what happens when you give people who are in poverty, do not have any money, when you give them a lump sum of money, millions, hundreds of millions of dollars, they fumble it. That's why I laugh when people say they want reparations. Most of you niggas can't manage money. So the last thing we should do is give you niggas money. And also, too, I don't know if people know this. You get reparations, you can't get reparations twice. So if y'all end up asking or finding a way to get these reparations, you can't go back and ask for them the money again. They already paid the debt. All right, double jeopardy. You can't go to jail twice for the same crime. All right, but I mean, that's where I guess a whole nother episode. Anyways, though, after West Virginia is Mississippi. Mississippi is normally deemed the poorest state in the union, but sometimes, West Virginia shows up. Anyways, Mississippi had the second lowest at 333,597 according to Go Banking rates. Again, over $250,000, right? Dumb people always overpaying for these sort of things. Anyways, meanwhile, joining the 5% of earners requires considerably more in many eastern states. Yep, we boarded this water, with Connecticut's threshold at 656,438 and New York at 621,301, the study found. Yeah, so when it comes to Connecticut / New York, a lot of people, I say a lot of people live in New York City, but there are plenty of people, same thing with like Maryland / Northern Virginia and DC. There are plenty of people who live in Connecticut, but then they bus it in. They don't catch a bus probably, but they travel into New York and make that New York money. But their actual address is Connecticut. A lot of politicians, their address, as far as their primary residence or where they're getting calculated at for this data, is DC. So you got all the politicians, not all of them, but a lot of politicians, their primary residence is DC, right? So that's what they're filling out, and so that income, that net worth, all that type of stuff gets equated. And same thing, a lot of people live in DC and they go work in Nova or they go work in Maryland, and vice versa, right? I mean, I work technically in Northern Virginia, but those are the type of things when you're looking at this data and you see these various states how they got it spaced out. You got to keep in mind a lot of people who live in Connecticut work in New York City. All right, here's an income to be a top earner. Again, top earner here is 5%, 5%, top 5% of income, particular state. All right, you need more than $500,000 annually to be considered amongst the highest earning residents in 11 states and DC. So DC is first. Here we go, 719,000. Connecticut 656. Then New York, Massachusetts, California, Jersey, Washington, Maryland, Virginia, Colorado. Yep, Illinois, Hawaii, New Hampshire, Florida, Texas. Yeah. So in short, you got the East Coast / Northeast, Eastern states. Then you got California, Washington, West Coast states. All right, then Colorado, which if you don't know what Colorado is, usually at the top of cost of living. Chicago / Chicago's not a state, but Illinois, where Chicago's at. Chicago has / Illinois has crazy high property taxes. All right, Hawaii, no surprise there. Then you go back to New Hampshire, then Florida, you imagine. Then Minnesota, Texas. Now you're kind of getting towards like the middle part. Utah, Georgia, right? Pennsylvania, right? You're getting all the rest of the states, that are popular but not as popular, right? You got very lower cost of living areas there, or very low cost of living areas. Carolinas, Wisconsin, right? You get into the Midwest, South, right? Then at the bottom, we could get into Wisconsin, Idaho, Maine, South Dakota, Iowa, Louisiana, Indiana, Kentucky, Oklahoma, Arkansas, aka Arkansas, Alabama, New Mexico, Mississippi, and then West Virginia. But still, it's 330,000, 719,000, with most states being, I would say the median is probably in this 450-ish range, K range. Let's see if they calculate it for us. And again, this is based on 2022 data from the U.S. Census Bureau. This comes down to cost of living. Murray said people in New York and DC, right, they pay higher salaries than people in states like, right, Arkansas and Louisiana. Exactly. Between 2017 and 2022, Iowa, Nevada, and Washington saw the biggest jumps in the amount needed to be considered among their state's top earners, according to Go Banking rates. So we got Idaho. Is that Idaho? Yeah, not Iowa. Nevada, and my memory slipping me, Washington. So we got Washington, though. Washington's top 10, right? 544, right above Maryland at 540. And we got Idaho. Idaho looking like is the bottom third at 402. And then that last state was Nevada. At 449 to 50,000. Yeah, I mean, Nevada had a lot of people moved away during the pandemic. They moved from California, and Las Vegas / Nevada was one of the major places where the great migration out of California, where people went. A lot of people went to Texas and Florida, but a lot of people went to Las Vegas. As Las Vegas, I must say it's not that far away. People drive from LA to Vegas, right? I believe it's like 3 hours or so.